Good morning. Um, we'll talk about something happier, in particular, some really good novels that I have read. But first, I'm going to go on a darker note. Yesterday, in a bit of weird timing, I talked about the amount of blood that has been spilled in journalism, the massive amounts of cuts. Guess what the news was this morning? The Denver Post is going to cut 26 more positions. 23 of those are going to be those covered by the Newspaper Guild, which includes everyone in the newsroom because the labor contract says that now everyone in the newsroom has to be covered by the guild before you had the right to join the guild or not. Anyway, so guess what? A lot of good people are going to be losing their jobs. And anyway, so I need something to pick me up. So guess what? We're going to talk about some good novels I have read. Um, there are a lot more that I want to read. Girl on a Train, I haven't read that yet. I'd like to. I see that's being made into a movie as well. One of the, well, I'll get into that later. First, and I'm sorry for the backwards writing, Kate Atkinson's Life After Life. She's a British writer, very, this is about a life in which someone goes from life to death and then suddenly comes back to life again. The first death happens within the first couple of pages, and then there are just again this same person being born, maybe living a little bit longer, and eventually they get into going over parts of their adult life that had caused them problems, so they start doing things differently. But it's a really unique look at fate and decisions and everything else. She's a very British writer, excellent piece of work. I've seen other people recommend it, and I do. Next in my stack, we've already talked about David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell. It's the source book for a true act outside the box mentality. Next, Khalid Hosseini's And the Mountains Echoed. This is the man who wrote The Kite Runner. Excellent book. He is a marvelous storyteller, and he goes into small town life in Afghanistan and the impacts on a family, some horrendous decisions that are made during the course of this book. But there are some parts that he writes that honestly, just you finish them and you go, that man is blessed in the way that he can tell stories and tell about people's lives. He goes through entire lifetimes of certain people. It begins with a children's tale, which a father is telling to his son, and by the time you reach the end of the chapter, you realize what the story that he is telling really means within the life of that family. Powerful book, exceptional writing. I wish I had this man's talent or even a fraction of it. Very good. This next book is just kind of a placekeeper. It's World Gone by Dennis Lehane, which is the second book, and actually it's the third book in the Joe Coughlin series. I say this is a placeholder because the book that I like even better is its predecessor, which is called Live by Night. My Facebook friends know I see that Live by Night is going to come out as a movie in 2017. Ben Affleck is taking the project under his wing. He's writing the screenplay. I hope he doesn't mess up Dennis Lehane too much, because Dennis Lehane is a marvelous writer. And even though Joe Coughlin is a bad guy, a gangster, you get to know and to a certain degree appreciate Joe. And by the time you're finished with Live by Night, at the ending, I mean, it'll grab you. It's good stuff, great stuff. Gone By is good. Don't read it first, since it's the end of the narrative. Read Live by Night, then pick this up. World Gone By. Dennis Lehane, just marvelous, marvelous writer. He's the guy who wrote Shelter Island and Mystic River and others. They're all based around Boston. Excellent stuff. Now joining Gladwell in the nonfiction part. This is an older book. It was published by a Christian publishing house, and it's A Father for All Seasons by Bob Welch. I worked with Bob in two places, at the Bend Bulletin. He was my predecessor as sports editor there, and then he moved around, went to work at the old Bellevue Journal-American, which was a marvelous newspaper, took a lot of chances. And then Bob came back, and I saw him sitting in someone's office being interviewed. And after that session was over, I walked into that person's office, Jim Godbold, at the Register Guard in Eugene, and just simply said, hire the guy. Bob is another writer who is blessed with immense talent. And A Father for All Seasons, I think, is his best work, and he's done secular work. This was the premise of this is the first chapter is Bob's dad and mom just have their 50th wedding anniversary. And then when Bob goes home that night, he gets a call in the middle of the night that his father just died. And so it's a collection of stories about fathers and their offspring and their spouses. And it's really, it's not only is it great writing, but there are some fantastic lessons. I haven't checked to see if this is in print. I got this, oh Lord, maybe, yeah, I'd have to check on when it was released. I got this when it was first released. Also in nonfiction, this is my favorite of the John Krakauer nonfiction works, Where Men Win Glory. It's the story of Pat Tillman, the former Arizona State football player who left an NFL career to become a ranger in the Army and was killed by friendly fire. Krakauer does a tremendous reporting job, and even gets into who likely fired the shots from among his own troops, who fired the shots that killed Pat Tillman. Marvelous piece of work. I highly recommend all of those. There are some other new books. There was one, I can't remember the exact word, but it's Beyond What We Can See or something like that, but it's about a bombing in World War II. I can't even remember the author. Excuse me, I should have done better research for doing this. I did read that little sample that some people put on a novel, and I will purchase that novel at some point. Anyway, those are my favorites. As you can see, I've got plenty of others. I got into reading a thriller, Jag, for a while, just because I fancied myself as a thriller writer, and it took me not very long to realize I'm not a thriller writer because I want more depth in my characters. Oh, one other novel, and I don't want this to pass by. Elizabeth Strout. This is The Burgess Boy. She also wrote Olive Kittredge. Elizabeth Strout and I share one characteristic, which is we write about pretty modern times. We're not into history. We're not into world building. We each use smaller places. My one summer season begins in the Dalles, Oregon, a town of maybe 10,000, 12,000. Elizabeth Strout's works go into her native Maine. And she is a marvelous writer. She doesn't overplay things, but she has that knack of doing what I wish I could do better, and which I'm striving to do, which is to delineate characters and the tensions that those characters face. She is marvelous. She is my literary muse. More than any of these other writers, we share an affection for the easy to grasp story which can yield at least a certain degree of catharsis. I believe in catharsis as one of the ultimate goals. Even a somewhat lighter book such as One Summer Season. A lot of people, R.W. Clay, my protagonist, yeah, you didn't have a baseball career, but you were 17 and 18 years old once, and you had to go through all those tough lessons of being that age. And that's what I try and delineate. So, okay, that's it. We have a rain-snow mix in Denver today. It's almost May. But this isn't unusual. You usually get a little bit of snow quite deep into the season. The reigning line around here is don't turn on your sprinkler systems until Mother's Day, which means we're getting close, and hopefully it won't snow on Mother's Day. So have a good weekend. Write the hell out of it. Read a good book. You know, One Summer Season is a good book. Available on Smashwords, $3.99. I really appreciate the support. So thank you very much, and we'll talk again the first part of next week. Bye-bye.